Thank you for making it on this Saturday morning for this webinar on low back pain. And mainly, what I wanted to focus on was also pelvic floor dysfunction and its relation to low back pain. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Annabelle D'Souza. I'm a resident physiotherapist here at Advanced Physiotherapy Center. I have been working in the past with my people with musculoskeletal disorders, and recently I've also started working with women with pelvic floor disorders, and I've completed my level 1 training. And so I decided to share this with you. Now, for the purposes of quality and training, we will be recording this video, so feel free to mute yourselves, or you can turn off your video. If you want to turn on your video, it's up to you. And if you have any questions at any time, you can message us in the chat box, and we will answer. I'll try to answer your questions as much as I can. All right. So I'm going to start. Go ahead and start with this webinar. So what I will be discussing today in this webinar is going to be, first I'm going to be talking about the incidence of pelvic floor dysfunction, like how common it is. And before we understand anything about pelvic floor dysfunction, it's very important to understand what is the function of the pelvic floor. So I'll be explaining that. And once we know the function, then we can talk about what are the common signs and symptoms associated with dysfunction. And then I'll be winding up with a few treatment options that we use in physiotherapy, and something that's non-invasive and something that you can try yourselves at home even today. All right. So I'm going to begin with the incidence. Now, pelvic floor dysfunction is actually something that can happen in both men and women, but it is more common in women. There are reportedly more cases of pelvic floor dysfunction in women, especially during pregnancy or post-pregnancy, or during the time of menopause, or even otherwise. There are a lot of pelvic floor dysfunctions which are reported in women. Men also have this dysfunction, but today I'll be talking a little bit more on the dysfunction in women. And mainly, pelvic floor dysfunction has been found to be associated with low back pain. So here in Canada, there was a study done by McMaster University in 2018, and they recruited women who had low back pain from around 7 different orthopedic clinics all over Canada. And they gave them a questionnaire to find out if they had any pelvic floor dysfunction. And they found that 96% of those participants who participated in the study had some sort of a pelvic floor dysfunction. Okay. And out of those 96% of women who reported pelvic floor dysfunction, they found that 84% of those women had an overactive pelvic floor. So what this means is that the pelvic floor issues in women are something that is quite prevalent. The incidence is a lot, it's very high. And there is a more tendency towards having an overactive or a tight pelvic floor than any other condition. This is the study that was in Canada, and it's quite a recent study. And the second thing that studies have shown is that urinary incontinence is another major issue. Now this, I don't have data from Canada, but this is a study that was done in Sweden, where 200 women were surveyed who had back pain, and they found that 78% of the women who suffered from back pain also suffered from urinary incontinence. So all of this goes to show that women suffering from low back pain do have a tendency towards having some pelvic floor dysfunction, and it is the incidence is pretty high, and that's why it's very important to know about this condition. All right. Now, before I discuss what pelvic floor dysfunction is, let's talk a little bit about the function of the pelvic floor. So I like to remember it in terms of 5 S's. So the first S stands for support. So the pelvic floor functions as a support organ. The second is it has a sexual function. The third is that pelvic floors. These are the sphincters which help us with continence and which prevent incontinence in general. And I'll be talking a little more about that later. And then the fourth function of the pelvic floor is the stability. It's often ignored, and people do not realize that the pelvic floor is also a part of the core. And this is where that connection with the low back is there. And lastly, the pelvic floor also functions as a sump pump. Now, a sump pump is something that you have in a basement that drains excess of water when there is a flood. So it's at the bottom and it helps to drain excessive fluids. All right. Any questions so far? I hope everyone can hear. I know it's like difficult sometimes without any feedback. So please feel free to chat at any time. All right, so a little more detail about the organs. This is actually the abdominal cavity from the side. So if you see from front to back, you can see in the front there is the pubic bone that's at the front of your pelvis, and at the back there's the spine. And at the bottom, the red part, what you see on the screen, that is the pelvic floor, and that's where the support comes from. And as you can see, it supports three very important, of course, which holds urine. The second is the uterus, which is the sexual organ, and the third is the rectum, which is at the back. So the pelvic floor acts as, you can see, it acts as a support. It's almost like it's a hammock which is holding these organs in place. All right. Now, talking about sexual function. So the pelvic floor tone influences the ability to feel pleasure during intercourse, or it helps with penetration in women. Okay, so that's its function, its sexual function. Besides that, the pelvic floor also, I said, has a function as a sphincteric function. So I talked about the organs, the bladder and the rectum. So the bladder holds urine, the rectum holds feces. So if these organs have openings at the bottom of the pelvic floor, and these openings are what we call sphincters. So they are somewhat circular like that, and they are under our voluntary control. So that's why we do not pee and poop at any time, even if our bladder or bowel are full. We do not pee or poop. We are continent, and we are able to hold it until we have the facility. So that's the sphincteric function of the pelvic floor. Now, coming to the function of the pelvic floor as a part of the core. Now, this I feel is the most important function of the pelvic floor. And to explain its role in core, I've given you a figure over here. So on the left-hand side, you can see this is the side of the abdomen and the back. So you can see that at the top, we have the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is a muscle, it's a part of the core, it's the top part of the core. And at the bottom, exactly opposite to the diaphragm at the bottom, is the pelvic floor. And the diaphragm and the pelvic floor form the roof and the floor of the abdominal cavity, the core cavity. And these both are connected to each other and are surrounded by the other muscles, that is your abdominal muscles. These are called the transverse abdominal muscles, and they wrap around your abdomen like a corset. Okay, now these are not your muscles that you can feel on the surface. They're very deep and right inside the abdominal cavity. They line the abdominal cavity basically. And at the back, you have very tiny muscles which are in between the spine, and they are called the multifidi. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about all these muscles, but just to give you an to give you an understanding, so you can see in the picture that all these muscles are connected to each other, and they form the boundaries of the abdomen, the abdominal cavity, and you can think of it like a balloon. So the diagram on the right represents that internal balloon, which is our core. So it's very important to understand that the pelvic floor is also connected to all these muscles through the core, inner core pressure system. And that's why you can't just think about the pelvic floor as one unit. That is the reason why it also influences the back, why it also influences breathing so much. Okay. And I'll explain a little more in detail when we talk about exercises. So this is the link to back pain. Now the next function is, like I said, the lymphatic drainage, the pumping action. So the pelvic floor is not always in a contracted or a relaxed state. It's like a jelly-like substance which keeps on moving. It contracts, relaxes. So this contraction and relaxation actually is essential for draining of lymphatic fluids which can collect in the pelvic floor area. It's similar to how your ankle, you have calf muscles, large calf muscles, which contract and relax as you walk, and they help to prevent you from getting any swelling in your feet. And if you have swelling in your feet, the doctors tell you to do ankle pumps, like you have to move your foot up and down. Similarly, the pelvic floor also acts as, has a pumping action. Okay. So these are all the functions of the pelvic floor. So now that we know what the functions are, we can easily think of what the dysfunctions could be depending on what part of the pelvic floor or what type of function is affected. So if we have a problem with support, if there's no support provided by the pelvic floor, like the pelvic floor is loose, then the organs which are sitting in the cavity can actually come down into the vagina, and that is what is called as organ prolapse. And many women have this symptom sometimes. They may feel like something is coming out of the vagina when they are bearing down, and it's an uncomfortable feeling. And it's something that can be treated by therapy in early stages. Now, obviously, if the sexual function is affected, there may be something, if the pelvic floor is too tight, then sometimes penetration is very painful, and that is what we call as dyspareunia or painful intercourse. Sometimes if the tone of the pelvic floor is not good, there may be a lack of sensation in that area, and that can also affect the sexual function. Now, if the sphincteric function is not there, like it's that is the openings for the urinary, the bladder, and the openings for the rectum. If these openings are not under a voluntary control for whatever reason, so if they are too tight, then there may be a lot of retention of urine or retention of feces. So you may have flatulence or constipation or urinary retention problems. Or if the sphincters are very loose and you can't squeeze them at the right time, then there can be incontinence. That is, there can be leaks of urine or even feces in some cases. All right. So that's about the sphincteric function. And in terms of stability, because I mentioned the pelvic floor is a part of the core, which is a continuous like wall inside that pressure, and that pressure system is affected. So it can affect your back, it can affect your hip, and it can also cause pelvic pain if there is some problems with the stability or the functioning of those muscles. And obviously, if it's not functioning well, it's not contracting and relaxing enough, there can be congestion in that area. Okay. Now I understand that all of this is like a lot of terms right here. So I made it very simple. So in terms of physiotherapy, from a physiotherapy perspective, it's nice to look at pelvic floor dysfunction in terms of the tone of the muscles. So there can be just two problems. It can be either hyperactive pelvic floor or hypoactive. When I say hyperactive, I mean that the tone is very high and everything is very tight. And when I say hypoactive, it means that the tone is very low and there's very less tone. Now, the surprising thing is that, like a lot of people might not know, is that in both these conditions, whether your pelvic floor is hyperactive or hypoactive, they are both not optimal conditions. So, in both of these conditions, weakness of the pelvic floor is very common. All right. So, even if you have a very tight and high tone in the pelvic floor, it can still be weak. And many people don't understand why it can be weak when it's tight, but it's as simple as, like, if you already have your biceps contracted in this end range here and you have to like lift a weight, you cannot go any further, right? But if it is at an optimal length, like if it's stretched out like that, it's easier for you to lift it up and move against that. So it's the same thing with the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor is already in a very contracted state. It cannot contract any further. It needs to relax and then only you can contract. So that's the reason why in hyperactive cases also you might have weakness. Okay, so that's all about what pelvic floor dysfunction is. All right. So now when it comes to physiotherapy treatment, we try to think of whether it's the high tone or low tone. In both cases, pelvic floor strengthening has to be done, but obviously it cannot be something that you do at home. Now, there is a very high level of evidence for pelvic floor muscle training, and especially if this training is done under supervision of a health professional or a physiotherapist who is trained in pelvic floor physiotherapy, it really helps a lot, especially in case of prolapse or in case of urinary incontinence. It can, or back pain, it can really be the missing link in therapy. So everyone thinks, so that means we need to do Kegels, right? And unfortunately, it's a very sad thing, but sometimes doctors, like when women go to a doctor and say that I have urinary incontinence or I get leaks when I cough and laugh, the common prescription is like, okay, start doing Kegels. And for those of you who don't know, Kegels is basically pelvic floor contraction and relaxation. And no doubt it is a very good exercise. It is an important strengthening exercise. But there are still so many people who do Kegels, but they say they are doing Kegels, but it still doesn't help them in any way. And in sometimes worsens their symptoms. So why is that? So I would like to think of like getting to the core of the issue rather than just starting with Kegels. So the issue like is going back to that diagram where I showed you that the pelvic floor is connected to the core. So if you see in this figure, in the balloon, so the pelvic floor is just one part of that entire pressure system of the abdomen and the part of the core. The pelvic floor is just at the bottom. It's only one muscle. Okay, if you are just contracting that one muscle, it's not going to change the entire core because there are so many other large muscles which are there, which are attached to the core, and they're all continuous with each other. So even the contraction and the tone of those muscles is going to affect your pelvic floor. For example, just imagine if your abdominal muscles are really squeezing on tight. Like see this picture here of the balloon where I've compressed on the abdominal muscles. So if you see that, because the abdominal muscles are working really, really very hard, the diaphragm and the pelvic floor are really badly stretched in opposite directions. And no matter how much breathing you do or how much strengthening you will do of the pelvic floor, it's never going to help unless you tackle those abdominal muscles which are working over time. And this is a common symptom that we see in a lot of women. In fact, some people have named it an hourglass syndrome. They call it an hourglass syndrome, that women try to take to suck their belly in and up, and they cause this kind of reaction on their pelvic floor, and it also affects their breathing. Okay, so you have to be very careful with the whole core. It's not just the pelvic floor that we target. And besides that, the pelvic floor also has other connections. So because the pelvic floor is at the base of the hip, so it's also connected to many muscles around the hip, the muscles at the back, at the tip of the spine. And like you saw, it's a part of the core and the abdominal muscles and the back muscles. It's also connected to your low back. So it's connected to your deep hip muscles, the tip of the spine, and something what we call as the SI joints. These are the sacroiliac joints. This is the joints at the back which connect your spine and pelvis. And often these things can present as back pain or hip pain, but it's actually also a problem with the pelvic floor. So sometimes direct approach to the pelvic floor is not useful, and we have to target these muscles around and these joints around the pelvic floor before actually starting with any Kegels. All right. So given all this information, so I have two exercises that everybody can try at home today, and you have to see if you can feel the contraction and relaxation yourself. And that I feel is a good starting point to start with pelvic floor exercises. So I'm going to show you those exercises today. So the first exercise that I'm going to demonstrate is a breathing exercise, because believe it or not, if you don't breathe well, nothing is going to work. Nothing is going to work long term. Okay, so this is one exercise which is called as the 360-degree breathing. So in the first part of the exercise, I want you to try and place your hands on the side of the abdominal wall, like I've shown on the picture here, on the side of your ribs. And as you inhale, you should feel the ribs coming out and up. And when you exhale, they should go down and in. Okay. So as you inhale, you should feel the ribs coming up and out. And as you exhale, you should feel them coming down and in. So this is a very important movement. Again, this targets the diaphragm part of the core. And it also influences the pelvic floor function. So it's a very important exercise. Then the second part of the exercise is to also look at breathing in the lower belly. So you place your hand just below your belly button and slightly above your pubic bone, and you take a deep breath, and when you inhale, the belly should kind of rise, and when you exhale, it should go in. Okay, so this is also another important function to target the core. And the last area is at the back, the abdominal area at the back, just below the ribs. You want to take a deep inhale, and you want to feel an inhalation even at the back, just below your ribs and above the pelvis area. So that's what I've pointed in the figure. So that's what you want to, these are the three different areas that you want to make sure that they move during breathing. And this is what we call 360-degree breathing, because it's all around. And it's very essential to target the core area before actually talking about pelvic floor dysfunction. Pelvic floor exercises. All right. So when you inhale and exhale, you should feel expansion in all these areas. An easy way to palpate all those three would be to probably keep your hand like this, so that you can, with your fingers, you can feel the front, and with your web space, you can feel the sides, and with your thumb, you can feel the back. So you should feel that all the areas and on both sides, they should expand equally, and they should also go in during exhalation. Okay. So if you're able to feel it in all these areas, then great. Then it's absolutely good. Then pelvic floor exercises is something that you can benefit from. But if not, then you have to probably start work a little more on breathing. Okay, so that's my one exercise for breathing. And the second exercise is actually about the pelvic floor contraction. And so this is only once the breathing is fine. So once you know how to breathe well, then you can coordinate your breathing with a pelvic floor contraction. Now, with an inhalation, normally what happens is the pelvic floor relaxes. Okay, so I like to imagine it as like a clock rain, one of those arcade games that you have, that you see sometimes. So when that clock rain has to come and pick up a toy and come down, it has to open up. Okay, or when you're going to try and pick up something, your hand has to open up. So I tell clients sometimes to imagine like a clock rain coming down and opening up, and that should happen during your inhalation. So as you take a deep inhale, your pelvic floor comes down and it should relax. The second part is when you exhale. So when you take an exhalation and you blow out, uh, the pelvic floor lifts and it contracts. Now if you want to really feel this self, you can do it right now sitting. So all you have to do is, if you're sitting on a chair, you just lean slightly forward. Okay. And so that we feel your pelvic floor area touching the seat, so that you can get some feedback, and you can go ahead and take a deep inhale. And when you take a deep inhalation, you should feel the pelvic floor coming down and relaxing. And when you exhale, you should feel it coming slightly lifting off the surface and contracting. And let me know how it feels. And if you are not able to feel your pelvic floor, if you're not able to understand this contraction, or if you're not able to breathe properly, then it's likely that you need some kind of supervised work. And that's something that you need to start with, right? And yes, that's all I wanted to share with you today about pelvic floor dysfunction. Does anybody have any questions for me? I'm going to see if I can unmute all of you. If anybody would like to ask any questions.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for such an amazing lecture. Obviously, it was very enlightening. Do you think I don't know if this is really a part of it, but do you think the pelvic floor strengthening could be something that can be beneficial with coccygeal fractures, or for that matter, any coccygeal sprains as well?
Actually, in the initial stages, when there is some damage and there is a fracture and there's too much of pain, in the initial stages, I don't think you can directly go for strengthening, because you will follow the same principles like any other muscle, right?
Right.
So if you have a fracture in the arm, you will, for a few weeks till the healing of the fracture happens.
Right.
Similarly, you will not do any pelvic floor movement or contractions during that time. Not very severe. But yes, you can start with a few breathing exercises, especially for relaxation. Because in these muscles, because of pain, there might be a lot of contraction and high tone. So yes, you can work with some relaxation. more than contraction or strengthening, you can work with relaxation in the initial phases.
And eventually, once, like, let's say the
Eventually,
cancer
once
is
they get
healed
better,
and
yes, once they get better, you have to check how the function is, and you'll have to accordingly strengthen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your question. It was a good question. I'm going to see. Are there any other questions? Or there is something in the chat? Okay. Is there any difference between doing these exercises for male and female? Yes, there is a little difference. Of course, anatomically, the way we cue the and even the muscles actually are different. So there are a lot more muscles in females than males, and so obviously the way we give the cue is different. In men, we will probably give a different cue. A cue will be probably to lift the penis close to you, or try to shorten the penis, something like that, or try to hold the urine. That will be the cue. But it is different. It's not entirely the same. The muscles and the layers are kind of different in men and women. And obviously the organs too. Yes. Thank you for a very informative and useful session. You're most welcome. Okay. Still waiting. Any questions? What about repetitions? Somebody is asking about repetitions. So you're asking about pelvic floor, or you're talking about these exercises that I explained right now? Okay, so the exercises that I explained right now. So the exercises that I explained right now can usually about, for the breathing exercise, about 5 repetitions. You can do about 5 repetitions, take a break, do 5 repetitions, and you can do like about, try to get about 10 to 15 reps. And ideally you can do this every hour, the breathing exercise. Every hour that you are sitting and every hour that you're awake, you can just keep doing them, because it's a question of training your brain to breathe well. It's just that after 5 deep breaths like that, you want to take a break, because it can cause some lightheadedness or dizziness. And in terms of pelvic floor contractions, ideally, when Kegel gave, when the exercises are prescribed, generally they say you have to do 10 repetitions with 10-second holds. But that's like the goal to reach. But we start with something very, very, very small, and then we progress to doing more repetitions. So it depends on patient to patient. We have to assess how long the patient is able to hold and how long the patient or the client can maintain the contraction. And sometimes what happens is that the people think that they are doing a pelvic floor contraction, but actually they are tightening their abdominals, or they are doing a gluteal squeeze, or they're squeezing their thighs together, but there's absolutely no pelvic floor contraction happening. Or sometimes they're actually bearing down instead of contracting up. So we have to all obviously assess and see, and then prescribe based on where the client is. Can the exercises be implemented in different types of positions? Yes, it can be done in different positions depending on how you're comfortable, because Somebody might not be comfortable sitting, somebody might not be comfortable lying down, somebody might be comfortable standing. So it can be done in different positions to bias different areas. Yes. And I hope that answers your questions. So, and the next question is does this exercise help to improve lumbopelvic rhythm? Okay, yeah. So this exercise is not for movement, it's more of a stability exercise. It can help. It can help. I do not say yes completely that it will help lumbopelvic rhythm. But it actually just helps with stability of the core. So lumbopelvic rhythm, I guess, is more of mobility. So that's a different thing. So I think it's more to do with stability, the pelvic floor right now. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. I'm going to look if there are any more questions. Hmm. You're welcome. Did I miss any other questions? I think not. If anybody else wants to unmute themselves and if they want to ask any question, you can go ahead. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think if there are no more questions, then I'm going to end right here. Thank you so much for everyone for participating and asking so many questions. And I'm going to stop right here. Have a good weekend, everybody. Bye.